Hello, before we begin, I sincerely apologize for the quality of the video in this upload. I haven't yet figured out a lighting solution in this flat and I didn't realize it was going to affect my camera so much. But this took ages to film, so I just tried to fiddle with it in post so it looked stylized. I recommend not watching it in full screen.
Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So me filming this video must mean that I have a small life update, and that is that I have moved into my own flat with my partner, which is super awesome, and it means that I have my own space for creating. So that means a possible return to YouTube. I have a lot of ideas, but who knows if I'll have the energy to execute them. And possibly a return to Twitch as well in the near future. We don't have internet yet, but we're working on it. So if you're watching this video and you know my usual content, I've never really done a video like this before, but I love watching videos like this. I'm definitely taking inspiration from the creator whose username is this, and I don't know how to say it, Izzy's. And she does kind of these deep dives into just like weird stuff that has happened in the history of the internet, and that stuff is my jam. And I was thinking about this the other night, and I realized that I don't think I've ever seen anybody else make a video on this specific topic. And today I'm going to be talking about Phan, P-H-A-N, Phan, the Dan and Phil fandom. So I don't know if I have access to the feature where I put the like little time codes on the thing, but if I can figure out how to do that, I will. If I can't figure out how to do that, I will as always have time codes in the description so you can see what I'm going to talk about and skip to the sections, or skip over the sections that you want to or don't want to watch. Now, I was huge into Phan in the sort of 2011 to 2016 period, and I still do watch their content pretty regularly. In fact, I probably watch everything that they put out. But if you know, you know, in the sort of early 2010s, it was on another level. So just a disclaimer, I'm going to be doing my best to put together resources and video clips and screenshots and receipts and everything. But for a lot of this, I'm going to be really relying on my own memory, because I really feel like I was there for all of this, and it's kind of hard to find the resources that reflect exactly my account of things. So this is going to be a mixture of my account and evidence that I can find to support that. Okay, so let's get into some context and talk about Phil, and then talk about Dan and how they came to arrive on the internet. I apologize about the lighting as well. I can't afford ring lights. Maybe one day. So let's talk about Phil. So Phil, Amazingphil, is Philip Lester, who was born in 1987, and I just did some quick math on this, so I might be wrong, but I think that makes him 34. He grew up in Lancaster, in the north of England. He started on YouTube back in 2006, which is crazy. That's like as far back as you can go. So he's been doing this for a very long time. His channel was called Amazingphil and still is called that to this day. His first video was titled Phil's Video Blog, 27th March 2006, which was only 2 minutes long.
Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my video blog, which I hope you're very excited to be a part of. Happy Mother's Day, for one. I got my mum this for Mother's Day. It's a monkey trapped in a cage. Hey!
Phil was 19 at that time, and he had this appearance of like a 2006 emo kid, but simultaneously very nerdy, very dorky, and very accessible. At the time he made that video, he was studying linguistics and video post-production at the University of York. He posted very frequently on YouTube, and his videos were very random, sort of skits and video blogs, just whatever popped into his mind he would put on his YouTube channel.
But you know what happens when you drink it, Jonathan!
Oh, shut up, Mary Beth!
Jonathan, no!
And obviously at the time he had little to no audience, and it was something that he was just doing as a hobby. Now, it's pretty difficult to find numbers reflecting the growth of his channel in those early days, even on the Wayback Machine. But as I understand it, because of his frequent uploads and because he was just doing it as a hobby, he continued to post frequently and gain subscribers very slowly. He hit both the 500,000 and the 1 million subscriber milestone in 2013, so both of those milestones at one time. So there was a period of long, slow growth and then like a boom to his channel plateau and a decline, even though he's still making content and has dedicated fans to this day. The comedy in his videos generally is very whimsical and kind of absurd, a little bit self-deprecating, as he tends to make fun of how kind of socially awkward and unusual he is. Toast. So that's a little bit of the background on Phil. Now let's move on to talking about Dan, who is Dan Howell. He was born in 1991, which makes him 30. I'm pretty sure about my math on this one. When he started his YouTube channel in 2009, it was called Dan Is Not On Fire. He recently, in the last few years, rebranded and is now just Dan Howell on YouTube. Daniel Howell, even, I think. So his first video in 2009 was called Hello Internet.
Hi. So, my name is Dan.
And he posted that on the 16th of October when he was 18 years old. As the story goes, Dan and Phil met on the internet kind of like through Phil's YouTube channel and Dan leaving comments. The two of them became online friends, and it's believed that Phil even had a hand in encouraging Dan to start his own YouTube channel. So in 2010, after Dan had already started his YouTube channel, he decided to go to law school after taking a gap year. So he started doing law school in Manchester, but he ended up dropping out in 2011 due to some struggles with his mental health, as well as just doubts in general about his future in law. Dan's style of comedy in his videos is notably different than Phil's in that it is much darker, more cynical, more sarcastic. It is also self-deprecating, but just in kind of like a general self-deprecating and also nihilistic way.
You know that sinking feeling that you get when you realize something really terrible, like, did I just text a nude to the wrong friend? Or I forgot to give Grandad his heart medicine.
So he and Phil's comedy styles are like compatible, but also quite different, but they balance each other out because Phil is this like colorful, soft, like happy person, and Dan's like branded to be this like more cynical, like only wears black, like edgier kind of person. And yeah, they just blended and the blend was good. So it's pretty easy to find timelines of Dan and Phil's relationship on the internet, as their fans have been very enthusiastic and thorough about cataloging their their relationship and pretty much everything they've done on the internet since the start of things. So I'll leave some of my resources either in the description or in the pinned comment. Dan and Phil apparently became Facebook friends in June of 2009, and then they met for the first time in October of 2009. In fact, on the 19th of October, just 3 days after Dan had posted his first YouTube video. While visiting together for that first time in London, Phil made and uploaded the video which is called Phil Is Not On Fire, which kind of became a fandom event. It became like an annual thing, like a collaboration that they did on both of their channels. Fans would prepare themselves for it every year. They would wait for the upload, refreshing their browsers until the minute that it was uploaded. They were live blogging on Tumblr. We used to draw the little cat whiskers onto our faces, and it was like a thing. So in 2010, Dan was living in Manchester and studying law, and then when he dropped out, he and Phil moved in together into a flat in Manchester. That was in 2011, and they have been living together ever since. So naturally, as the years go by, and they've been living together for all this time and they still haven't separated, fans started to speculate pretty much from the jump on the nature of their relationship. Something that really didn't help the speculation and the rumors was a video that Phil uploaded onto YouTube on the 13th of February
2010.
And it was a video unlike anything else on his channel, and one that was never meant to be seen, one that he tried very hard to suppress. But more on that later. Over the years, Dan and Phil made quite a lot of content, just solo content on their respective channels, but they also made a lot of different content together and separately on many different platforms and in many different avenues. They frequently featured on each other's channels, sometimes on camera, sometimes just off camera. They both did frequent YouNow live streams separately. They started the Super Amazing project, which if you were in the fandom, that is going to be a core memory unlocked for you, because I had completely forgotten that that channel had existed. And that was basically just a collaboration channel together where they posted just like fun, sort of structured, collaborative content from 2011 until 2014. They then got a job together hosting a BBC Radio 1 radio show, and this was big. So they did the radio show from December 2012 until April 2016. And like I said, this... Are you kidding me? Amazing. Doesn't matter. It really wasn't every day back in 2012 that a YouTube star got any kind of mainstream platforming or attention. The BBC and BBC Radio 1 is obviously super popular in the UK, but also a lot of Dan and Phil's fans were tuning in to the radio show with the online live stream of the radio show. And I was one of these people. The show used to be on Sunday nights, so I would listen. It came on at about 8 p.m. and so it would be my like bedtime thing before I went to sleep on Sunday night and had to get up for school in the morning. And I used to live blog it on Tumblr, so I'd watch and be blogging on the side and like sharing little GIFs and quotes and memes. And it was actually how I got like most of my Tumblr followers at the time, and it was so much fun. I remember it making me so happy and really feeling like I was a part of something. And I can honestly say, looking back, the show was really good. Dan and Phil had great chemistry together, and also the music they played was great, like really genuinely very good. And the BBC gig led to a lot more exposure and recognition for the pair. It was during this time when they started doing lots of professional hosting, meeting celebrities, winning awards, and their following on their platforms were just ballooning. As they grew in popularity, this was also the time when YouTube as a space itself was also developing and changing, and YouTubers were just starting to realize that they could have a huge following and have lots of fans and be influencers and earn money from YouTube. And Dan and Phil also at this time started collaborating with a lot more like well-known YouTubers that were also kind of in their big boom. So it's my understanding that when they stopped doing the radio show in 2016, it was because they were feeling pretty burnt out from the hard work of running a successful BBC radio show. And at that time, they were mostly making content on their joint gaming channel, which was called Dan and Phil Games, which they had begun back in 2014. And then in 2016, they started posting very frequently on the gaming channel. And it was super popular. It had, I think, like 3.1 million subscribers when they stopped uploading on the channel. And especially their like Halloween and Christmas gaming series, as well as their Sims 4 gaming series, were very popular among the fans. So they stopped posting on the gaming channel in December of 2018 after like 2 years of like very focused gaming content. And then some of their other endeavors during this time included some games. So they made an app in 2015 called the 7-Second Challenge, and then they made a board game called, like a party board game called Truth Bombs in 2017. They also created a book in 2015, so that was still during the BBC time, and that was called The Amazing Book Is Not on Fire, known among fans as Tabanoff. And then they went on tour. The Amazing Tour Is Not on Fire in 2016, and that was Tatanoff. They went on another tour quite recently in 2018, which was called Interactive Extroverts, which included 80 shows in 18 countries. And then most recently, Dan actually released a book as a solo project in May of 2021, which was kind of like a autobiography self-help situation called You Will Get Through This Night. So that's kind of an overview of the rise of Dan and Phil. And they're definitely kind of past their peak, but they've always, like, throughout the process struck me as like super humble people who, you know, came into fame and they were like, whoa, this is cool, but we're just dudes doing our thing. And then when they were kind of on the other end of it, they were like, well, you know, we're going to keep doing our thing. We're going to do our creative projects and do whatever we feel like passionate about and make smart business moves and everything. And they still have, like I said earlier, a pretty loyal fan base. Speaking of a loyal fan base, let's talk about the PH fandom. So like I said earlier, as long as Dan and Phil have been publicly friends, fans have speculated about the nature of their relationship, and some of them pretty fervently believed that the two were romantically involved. They had a pretty enthusiastic fan base, and while it's not true to say that all of them shipped Phan, many of them did, and it was pretty crazy and at times extremely toxic. So let's just talk a little bit about shipping and what it is and what it was at that time. So according to a Vox article on Fandom Lingo, the term shipping was actually coined in the X-Files fandom, like back in the 90s, to talk about the relationship between Mulder and Scully. The more you know. The word just refers to the word relationship, or to ship a couple is to wish that they were in a relationship. And so shipping refers to like the act of wishing two people were in a relationship. So shipping was a huge part of online culture in the early 2010s. Fans would form whole communities, like firstly around the media that they were consuming, and then their like opinions and theories around those things. And so fandom was just huge, and shipping was just a part of that, you know, sharing your thoughts and opinions about the media that you were consuming. Sometimes different ships in certain fandoms would be in conflict, and some fans would ship a pairing and other fans would reject the pairing either just in and of itself or in favor of a different pairing. Like, for example, if you look at the One Direction fandom, the big main ship was between Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson, Larry Stylinson, and many of the fans were very enthusiastic about this pairing, but many other fans were like, no, I don't ship it because, like, secretly I ship myself with Harry Styles, but other fans were just like, no, I don't ship Larry because I actually ship Louis with Zayn. And sometimes this caused like conflict in the fandom. It's wild. Now, just as a little side note here, I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of these pairings and ships at the time were MLM and queer ships. And I think it largely has to do with the fact that fans craved representation of queer relationships. So this whole Dan and Phil shipping thing is existing in a time when shipping was a huge part of fan culture and people became very, very invested in like the collective of their chosen content in their fandoms. became very invested in their characters that they loved, in their idols, and in their ship pairings. So Dan and Phil were gaining popularity on YouTube. In fact, they were pretty huge, right? Like I said, Phil only hit 1 million subscribers in 2013, but to have 1 million subscribers in 2013 and to have anything close to 1 million subscribers pre-2013 was actually pretty rare. It was the rise of the YouTubers, and it was mostly unprecedented at the time. And what that meant is that you had these very enthusiastic fans discovering a whole new group of like real people that they can relate to, that they can consume content about, that they can share their opinions and thoughts about their content, but there were no rules. It was the wild, wild west, and nobody knew how to act right. And there was no line drawn at that time between shipping fictional characters and shipping real people. And not just shipping like two celebrities who literally do not care or will ever see your opinions, but shipping of people who they were kind of in like a dialogue with all the time, an ongoing dialogue. And also people who didn't know that they were going to get famous, didn't plan on it, didn't know it was possible when they started uploading to YouTube. So they didn't plan for it, and they didn't plan for how it was going to affect their lives and their relationships offline. So people shipped Dan and Phil. The ship was called Phan with a PH. It's like Miranda Sings moment there. Oh! Even with my red lipstick on. Okay. The shipping was extreme and fanatical, and in my opinion, extremely toxic and extremely disrespectful to Dan and Phil as people. You only need to look up the word fan or Dan and Phil fan on YouTube to get an idea of how out of hand it was, and to be honest, it still is that way. Fans would discuss and fangirl over Dan and Phil's relationship, act as if they were certain about things that had never been revealed to them, especially, you know, around their sexuality and the nature of their relationship, and they made a lot of huge assumptions. They would label any and every interaction between the two, any physical contact, even an accidental like bump with the shoulder, to any eye contact that the pair had, as being indicative of like sexual or romantic tension between the pair. They would collect evidence and clip things together out of context to make a point about their beliefs about the pair's relationship. They would comb through their whole past online, find everything that they could find on them, and they were extremely meticulous about scouring through and why can't I say that word? Catalog all of, oh my god, I was so excited that I said the word right and then I just couldn't think anymore. And cataloging and help. They were extremely meticulous about scouring through and cataloging their every move online. And it didn't help that, like I said, Dan and Phil had no idea that they were going to get famous, and all of a sudden they were famous, and there was no way to scrub their past online when they were just normal dudes, you know, posting things on Mindspace.
Bisexual Dan returns. Because hey, just like MySpace, I'm only telling a few people on the internet right now. It's not like one day I'm gonna get so many followers that random strangers in my family might see it.
And their fans found everything. There were also no boundaries to this behavior. Fans would comment about it openly, overtly, in every space. Interviews and panels, interviews with other creators, the comments section of their videos, on Twitter, on Tumblr.
Do you ship Phan? Yes, I ship Phan. Do you? A little bit. A little bit.
They were writing fan fictions, which I guess is... No, it's pretty weird. All my love to the fans, I was one of you, and fan fictions involving real life people are pretty weird. But I guess they're not that harmful because... But furthermore, and y'all know this is true, some of them were extremely disturbing. You know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm never going to get some of this information out of my mind. Unfortunately, the shipping that was going on in the fandom was actually having a serious effect on Dan and Phil as individuals and on their relationship. Neither Dan nor Phil was openly out as being queer or gay. They had made some throwaway comments about their sexuality online, but never an undeniable or unambiguous confirmation. In my memory, Phil was pretty quiet about their relationship, and I don't think ever really made any active denials of their relationship, but Dan certainly did. I think around the 2012 period was when Dan really felt the need to actively state that he and Phil were not in a relationship, to deny their relationship, and he was understandably pretty spicy about it. It really was not something that he wanted people commenting on. So Dan and Phil actually ended up both independently coming out in 2019, in June, actually just 2 weeks apart. And we'll come back and talk about this later, but can you just imagine being in their shoes in the early 2010s, not being out as gay, again, not having planned on their internet fame leaking into their real lives and jeopardizing their privacy in their real lives, and having people just publicly non-stop speculating about your relationship with your best friend, writing graphically about your sex life, reading into your every move long before you were ready to come out. I mean, it was like 10 years later that they finally came out. And honestly, I have to say that their friendship must be unbelievably strong in order to survive something like that unfractured. But it wasn't always so great. So I'll just read this account from a fan wiki, which I just have to say, someone at some point in time lied to the person who wrote this and told them that the word wank is something you can just use in conversation, and it's used twice in this paragraph. These blogs, plus a bunch of others, started to push the narrative that Phan was real, which commenced in a war not only between shippers and non-shippers, but also Dan himself, who at the time started to get involved in the Phan tag wank, going so far as to create a side blog named Customer Service Blog, in which he replied to questions in an ask box. At this point, he made ranty posts about shippers, denied a lot of the so-called proof these previous blogs had come up with, and tried to separate the danisnotonfire brand from the Amazingphil brand. He mentioned not being joined at the hip and not being a double act a lot. Many people refer to 2012 Phan as the dark times, which led to its own subcategory of angsty fanfiction. Dan and Phil, ever since the 2012 wank, have neglected to even touch on the subject of shipping, except for a few counted occasions. Now, armed with all of this context, it's time to talk about the incident. The video that was never meant to be seen, the Valentine's Day video. Now, I have to say, coming out of 2010s fandom, it was pretty taboo to talk about this, and honestly, even today, I still feel kind of weird about talking about this, but it's interesting, so here we go. It was September 17th, 2011. A YouTube glitch caused a video on Phil's second channel, Less Amazingphil, to become accidentally unprivated. In it, Phil tells the story of the beginning of a romantic relationship between himself and Dan, their first date, their first kiss, how they fell in love. It consisted of a voiceover of Phil speaking, along with animations and drawings to illustrate. It was extremely intimate and private information, And it was beautiful and romantic, but it was never meant to be seen. Neither Dan nor Phil were openly out as gay. They had never publicly confirmed their relationship. In fact, they had denied it. They were nowhere near ready to have a public queer relationship, nor was it ever part of the plan to subject their relationship to the public eye. Phil quickly privated the video again and came up with a cover story, but the video was downloaded and continued to resurface now and then on the internet, even until now. Now, I can't say for sure what actually happened, and it's totally possible that the story Phil gave was the truth, but it didn't convince everyone. The date on this video showed that the video was posted to Phil's channel on February 13th, 2010 as an unlisted video, meaning that only someone who was sent the link to that video would be able to follow the link and watch the video, otherwise it was private to everyone else. This was about 5 months after Dan and Phil had met in person and about 8 months since they were estimated to have met online. At the time the video was posted, Dan was on a family holiday in India. The logical conclusion from fans was that Dan and Phil had been apart for their first Valentine's Day as a couple, and Phil had made the video as a romantic gesture for Dan and sent him the video on Valentine's Day on the 14th. However, Phil had claimed that the video had been made as a joke, as a prank, since their fan base already believed that there was something going on between them, and they had planned to release the video on April Fool's Day, on April 1st. Phil says that the pair had then decided that the prank would be going a bit far and that it wouldn't be taken well, so they decided against ever making it public. The video had been left unlisted and then was accidentally unprivated in September. Now, fans had a number of problems with this explanation. Firstly, why had they posted the video
6 weeks
before April Fool's? Why was it posted the day before Valentine's Day, as if on purpose? The Valentine's Day video also seemed extremely earnest and didn't contain any of Phil's usual comedic style. It contained a lot of details which would align very well with the known timeline of Dan and Phil's relationship. It was adorable, but it was a little bit too convincing to be just a prank. The reaction to the Valentine's Day video was extremely interesting, just as a case study about fan behavior. So after the video was posted, it was downloaded in the short window that it was public, and it was reposted now and again in all different corners of the internet, and the videos were then taken down either by Phil himself or by fans who just disagreed with the video being posted and being seen. So the fandom was divided. Many fans desperately wanted to see the Valentine's Day video. It was rare to find, it was hard to get your hands on, and most were thirsty AF for some sweet, sweet confirmation of what they had hoped to be true. Other fans seriously condemned the spread and the reposting of the video. They respected how badly Dan and Phil were trying to keep it offline, trying to prevent its spread, and they wanted to respect their privacy and their wishes. So I was there for all of this, and I actually did see the video way back when it was first being circulated and first being talked about. It was really hard to get a link to. So the Valentine's Day video was huge news in the fandom, but simultaneously it became very taboo to even talk about it. Most people knew about the Valentine's Day video, but if you watched it, you did so covertly, and posting about it could result in being harshly reprimanded and condemned. Nowadays, you can actually find it online. I just took a gamble and typed it into the Google search bar and it popped right up, and I honestly couldn't believe it. It was such a big deal back in the day. It was so hard to get a hold of. You were not going to find it on YouTube. It was going to be on some weird video site somewhere else. And so I was pretty surprised to find that it's just freely available. But even still, If you look at the comments on that video, even today, there are people in the comments of that video who are very upset that it's out there, who are still defending Dan and Phil about it, who are still asking for the video to be taken down and for people to respect their privacy, even though they're now, out and they're past it. And I think they've really moved on from the Valentine's Day video. So that brings us to the present day. So where's the story? How does it end? The Valentine's Day video was largely forgotten about, but I also think mostly because the people who were fans of Dan and Phil in the 2010s when they were teenagers are in their 20s now and have grown up, are not as interested, have learned a lot about the ethics of shipping real people, have just learned and changed a lot in general. Most of us look back on that time with a mixture of nostalgia and extreme cringe, but the idea of having internet fame and everything that comes along with it has been around for long enough now for people to have developed a bit more of a social code around it. Dan and Phil are a very interesting case study when it comes to the speculation on their sexuality. As I said earlier, they both came out in 2019.
Hi, I'm gay.
And on the nature of their relationship, Dan said this.
And through the magic of the internet, I met Phil. And obviously we were more than friends, but it was more than just romantic. We are real best friends, companions through life, like actual soulmates. But here's the thing. I'm somebody that wants to keep the details of my personal life private. So is Phil.
When Dan and Phil came out, the fans of old were ecstatic, and a part of that feeling came from our old fangirl centers that were just thrilled to be right about something that we desperately wanted to be true, and that after 10 years, I don't think we ever thought we were going to get an answer on and a resolution on. But on the other hand, now that Dan and Phil are out, I think that, we've grown and we've matured, and now we just really feel happy with our whole hearts that they actually came out in their own time, that they're living openly and honestly now, that they're talking about being queer, that they seem really happy, and that the whole fan shipping catastrophe didn't actually end up damaging their friendship and their relationship beyond repair.
Thinking straight. Like now, apparently. And
Well, we both had this moment in
Yeah.
2019.
what was that?
We're gay.
We're gay. I was thinking gay.
I'm sitting on a bad boy piece of information. Do you understand? A bad boy piece of fucking information.
What's this bitch crying about?
Of course, in hindsight, we know that what we were doing was wrong and that our actions were harmful and problematic.
Sexuality is a general fact that it can be very useful to know about a person for several reasons, but we can't force people to disclose that either. We don't know this person's life story, what they've been through, if they haven't told people, if they'll lose their job, if they're in danger. There are so many reasons someone might not be open about it.
It's wrong to speculate on people's sexuality and relationship openly and publicly. It is not okay to gather evidence in an attempt to out people. It's weird to ship real people, and our behavior profoundly affected the lives of real closeted queer people and may have made them feel violated or even unsafe. And that's all I scripted, so that's fun. So here comes an unscripted conclusion. So I think that where we're at now in our timeline of our, collective journey on the internet, when we look back at things like this, I think it's just important to, be curious about what was going on in our minds at that time, and also to learn from our past mistakes, and thank goodness it seems like we did. So yeah, comment down below, what were your experiences with this? Were you online at that time? Were you fans of Dan and Phil? Were you part of some other wild, crazy shipping catastrophes? And yeah, generally let me know what you think. If you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. If you like me and want to see more from my channel, you can click the subscribe button down below, and I make new videos. Hey, who knows? Who knows how often? Knowing myself, I'll see you guys in 6 months. I'm happy to have had the opportunity to get all this stuff off my chest, because it's so wild, you live through all this stuff and then you carry around all this information, you have nowhere to put it, so I'm putting it here. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching. I love you. Goodbye. Doo-doo.